What's up, tubers? Tyler O'Connor here, Simplistic Fishing, back at you tonight. We're going to talk about a little bass fishing 101, and tonight our focus is going to be on rods. Last time we talked about frog fishing, and I talked to you a little bit about the importance of rods, but tonight, since it's getting really close to Christmas, I know you guys are probably going to either be asking for new rods or you're going to be buying some new rods when you get hopefully a little bit of cash or some spending dough or some gift cards maybe from the whole family. You can go out and get you guys a new rod. So I want to talk to you guys about the different rods that are out there, and really most importantly, the different techniques and things like that for each one of these rods. This is one of the most confusing things I think there is for being a brand new bass fisherman, is trying to figure out what the heck rod you're supposed to be buying. And then once you buy it, what lures are you supposed to use with it? Well, hopefully I can help you out tonight with some of the tips that I've learned along the way. Let's get started. Here we go. All right, so when we're talking about selecting rods and buying rods and all of that stuff, I've tried to kind of simplify it down for you. It is simplistic fishing, so I'm not going to go into tons and tons of detail on rods and stuff, but I'm going to try to give you enough information to where you can make some pretty good purchases. So first off, let's talk about standard rod lengths. Now, these are my standard rod lengths. Rod lengths can vary, and they're all over the place, but these are kind of the standard ones that I see, and these are also kind of the rod lengths that I use. So 6'9" to 7'2", that's typically going to be my medium rods. That's going to be my soft jerk baits, stuff like that, my smaller crankbaits and my weightless plastics. That's going to be that really light rod. If you've ever watched any of my videos, you'll see me throwing it. That's actually my ducket rod that I have, and I really love that thing for jerk baits. Also love it for throwing those little tiny crankbaits, and for my soft jerk baits too. It's one of my favorite rods to throw. Then kind of moving up from there, you get into 7 foot to 7'11". You get into medium heavy. And so medium heavy, you kind of get into two different things here. First off would be moderate action. So a medium heavy moderate action, we're going to go into some more detail in a minute, is going to give you a lot more bend. So that rod's going to bend a whole lot more, but you're not going to have as much sensitivity as you would for a fast. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. But as far as the medium heavy moderate actions, you're going to buy those for basically anything that has a treble hook. So anything you're throwing out there and you're moving it back, or pretty much any of your moving baits, you want the moderate action for your moving baits. Now, we can move up from there, still staying on the medium heavy, but go to a fast action. And if you do that, that changes the rod a little bit. The rod's not going to bend nearly as much. It's only going to bend more towards the tip, and you're going to have a lot more sensitivity, but it's not going to load as much, meaning it's not going to bend as much as the moderates. So as far as medium heavy fast action, for those, you're looking at single hook baits and really those slow moving baits. And again, we're going to break that down here in just a minute, get a little bit more detail for you guys. Moving over on rod lengths from 7'3" to 7'11", really, heavy fast action. That's really what I'm going to use when I get into that type of length and that kind of power. So really I'm going to use that for slow moving baits, dragging baits, my Carolina rigs, things like that. Also, moving up from the heavy, you also have extra heavy. So your extra heavies are typically going to be 7'2" to 7'11". 7'2" might be a little bit short for an extra heavy, but those are going to be fast action typically as well. That's going to be for your frogging and your punching and stuff like that. So let's move over and let's really break this thing down. So let's talk about a medium, moderate action, low sensitivity. And typically, like that ducket rod I was telling you guys about, that doesn't even have action on it. It just says medium. That's all it says. So if it just says medium, you pretty much got to figure that's probably just medium across the board, moderate action. And that kind of rod, like we said before, it's probably going to be 6'9" to 7'1", but your common applications there are going to be for your jerk baits. That's really important for your jerk baits because you want to have a lighter rod for your jerk baits. One, so it doesn't wear you out, but two, just so you get the right action on your jerk baits. Also, soft jerk baits, small cranks. We talked about those tiny little 6-cent crankbaits. I love those things. I love throwing them on my little jerk bait rod. And then also small lipless cranks. So the ones that are smaller than quarter of an ounce, or pretty much quarter of an ounce or smaller, you can throw this on this rod and it works really, really well. Now, if we move over, so we talked about the medium, right? That's going to be the lightest one that we have out there that I would use. Now, you can get into medium lights and stuff like that, but that's not really my game, especially here in Texas. some of those fish would break those rods. So medium heavy, moving over, medium heavy, moderate action means basically low sensitivity and better load. So basically what that means is that the moderate action is going to bend. So the rod's going to bend a lot more, but it's not going to have as much sensitivity as you would have with a fast action where it's just that tip that's moving. So kind of a big difference there. So let's talk about this one. We talked about it earlier. Common applications, that's going to be your chatterbaits or your bladed jigs, whatever you guys want to call it. Spinner baits. I actually like throwing my spinner baits on fast action. We'll talk about here in a minute, but they will work on moderate action. Swim baits as well. Now this is one I'm going to kind of, or not swim baits, swim jigs. I'll talk about it here in a minute. Swim baits are great for moderate action. Crankbaits are great for moderate action. Lipless crankbaits or rattle traps, whatever you guys want to call those. And swim jigs. Now swim jigs kind of put an asterisk by because swim jigs are different for me. I'll use them on two different rods. If I'm throwing it out there and I'm moving it up and down, kind of just bouncing in the water and using my rod tip to bounce it as I'm retrieving it in, I can't remember the name of that, but if I'm doing that, I'm going to do that with a moderate action rod. I can get a lot more play out of it, and I can move that bait a lot more. If I'm just sitting there with a swim jig and I'm flipping it into cover for whatever reason, I'm just using it as my jig and I'm just popping it a couple times and then bringing it in, I'm going to switch over and throw that on a fast action so I can have better sensitivity. All right, so let's keep moving. Let's move over. And also spoons. Yes, before I leave, spoons, definitely. Look, do not throw your spoons on fast action rods. You're going to lose a lot of sensitivity and stuff. Not sensitivity, but a lot of flexibility and things like that. And you're also going to lose a bunch of hook sets. So you're going to lose a bunch of fish. So definitely, if you're throwing spoons, throw those on your moderate action rods. You want that flexibility. You need that thing to be able to load up, things like that. All right, so moving over. Let's talk about medium heavy fast action. So medium heavy fast action just means that it's higher sensitivity with lesser load. And if you think of load, just think of bend. That's probably the easiest and simplest way to look at it. So your medium heavy fast actions, that's going to be, your common applications there. That's going to be for your Texas rigs. That's what I throw on my Texas rigs almost 90% of the time. Finesse jigs are good too. Anything quarter ounce or below. Even a half ounce will work too on a heavy action, on a fast action, medium heavy. Also, shaky heads are really good as well. Wobble heads, swing heads, whatever you guys want to call those. And then spinner baits, like I said before, I like throwing my spinner baits on a fast action, especially if they're bigger. Now, those smaller ones, I'll put them on the moderates, but the bigger ones, if I start getting a little bit heavier weight, like half ounce or so, I'll usually switch over to my fast action. And swim jigs, talked about that. If I'm using it like a jig, or I'm flipping in the cover and popping it a couple times, I definitely want a fast action there and not moderate. All right, so now we're going to switch over. We're going to talk about heavy rods. So when would you buy a heavy rod and what action do you want? Well, typically on my heavy rods, the action is always going to be fast action. And a lot of the rods you're going to see that's the only option, but there's definitely options out there. If you dig far enough, you can find any rod you want. But heavy, fast action means it has higher sensitivity, so it's really sensitive, just like that medium heavy fast action, but it has lesser load, meaning it's not going to bend as much, so you're going to have to drive that hook in. So common applications here, just like before, jigs. So these are going to be your little bigger jigs than we talked about before. Your Carolina rigs are really good for heavy rods. Larger spinner baits, those bigger ones you want to slow roll around the trees and stuff like that. Larger swim baits, not talking the giant swim baits, but the bigger size swim baits. And also Texas rigs. So if you get up to kind of more above a half ounce, you're starting to get into say 3/4 ounce or above, then that's probably when you want to switch over to your heavy rod, just so that you can balance the weight a little bit better. And then last but not least, and this is going to be definitely a debate that we would have, would be Alabama rigs. I've talked to you guys about my A-rig setup. In fact, I'm going to show it to you guys here in just a minute. But my A-rig setup is actually on fast action. I've heard a lot of people say that you should throw that on moderate action. So give it a try, see which one you like better. I actually like my fast action better. It's a 710 fast action, and it's a heavy rod. I really like it. And then last but not least, extra heavy. Now, you're probably not going to want an extra heavy rod if you're a beginner. If you're starting to get a little bit more advanced in bass fishing and you're getting to where you're doing some flipping into mats and things like that, or if you're throwing a frog a lot, that's where you definitely want an extra heavy rod. or, like I said, punching head vegetation or giant swim baits. So on the frog fishing, I'll talk about it here in a minute. That rod is crucial. Getting an extra heavy rod is kind of tricky. If you don't spend a little money and get the higher end extra heavy rods, they're very clunky. They're like a broomstick. And to be honest with you, they're not any fun fishing because they just wear you out. So if you get an extra heavy rod, really make sure you're buying a high quality rod because the low quality rods are probably going to wear you out. All right, let's switch over. Let's talk about my rod setups and how they all match up to what we talked about. Okay, so we've gone over the rods, the rod sizes, heavy, medium, extra heavy. So now what I want to do is kind of put all that stuff we just talked about and kind of put it into more of a practical situation for you, basically show you my rod setup. So my frog rod, we talked about it. Frogging would be extra heavy, right? So this is a 7.3 extra heavy X Pride. You can see it right here. Let me see if we can zoom in here for you guys and show it to you. It's a 7.3 extra heavy fast. I can really pull the fish out of some really heavy cover with this thing. Definitely a very strong rod, fast tip. I can just power the hook sets and everything. And what I really like about this rod in particular is I've tried several different frog rods, and this is the only one that I was able to find that I can fish all day long with without it hurting my wrist. So check that one out, 7.3 extra heavy. Love that one. Now the next one I want to talk to you guys about is in moderate action. So if you see here, this rod's huge. It's a 711, so way taller than me. But you can see here it bends a ton. Look at the bend that I have in this one. If I would have done the same bend, we'll do it on the fast action, but this is moderate action. So tons of bend. This is what you need for cranking. So this is actually my deep crank reel. It's a 711 moderate action. So it has a ton of bend, super long. I can chuck it way out there. 711 moderate action. This is a 6 cents rod. I really like this one. This one's treated me really well as well. Deep cranks, caught a lot of fish on this one. This is a really good rod to have. Again, that moderate action with the treble hooks. That's why I'm throwing moderate out there. And the 711, because I want to make really long casts. I'm not sitting here using this rod to flip it up in docks. I'd hit every dock and every rope that was available, but I can sit there and be out on a creek channel in the middle of the lake, and I could chuck this thing forever and not really have to worry that much about my accuracy. All right. So you've seen an extra heavy. You've seen a medium heavy, moderate. So medium heavy, moderate really bent a ton. Now let's talk about a medium heavy fast action. So this is my all-time favorite rod, probably the one I use more than any other one, and has definitely been my all-time favorite. This is a Unicorn by 6 cents. It's a 7.3 medium heavy, but it's fast. So if you look up here at the tip, this rod does not bend very much. It's pretty firm up here at the top. Fast action, got really good sensitivity. It's super light. And again, fast action because I'm using that for things like this, my shaky head. Kind of fix that, it's driving me crazy. Got my little shaky head on there. I also use it for Texas rigs, things like that. This is just really my kind of all around go-to rod. Not necessarily this one. I've got 3 or 4 7.3 medium heavy fast. That's probably the rod that I use the most. I like to slow fish a lot, and therefore I like those fast tips so I can have that good sensitivity. So another good example here, 7.3 medium heavy fast. Use that for my shaky heads, my Texas rigs, all that stuff that I'm dragging on the bottom. Also use it for my finesse jigs or my smaller jigs, maybe my half-ounce jigs, ones that aren't really giant that I can still get pretty good feel with and still make a pretty good hook set with. The next rod I want to talk to you about, I talked to you about it earlier is my A-rig rod. And this is by Kistler. This is actually a 710 heavy, fast action, I believe. So this thing doesn't bend too much. It has a little bit of bend to it, but not much. You can see here I'm pulling down on it. The bend probably stops about right in here. But I really like this rod. I think one of the things that I like about the most is probably just because the length. The 710 really allows me to chuck this A-rig way out there, and it doesn't wear me out. The rod is pretty light, so even though it's a heavy rod per se, it's still pretty lightweight. So I really like the way it feels. Feels good in my hand. Extra long handle as well, so I can get 2 hands on here when I'm really chucking the A-rig. That actually saves me, lets me throw it for a lot longer. So again, we're talking about it, right? Longer rod, because I don't have to make accurate casts with an A-rig, but heavy because Basically, I got some really heavyweight stuff on here. The fast tip, that's going to be pretty much, again, that's kind of a debatable thing. Some people would say throw this on a medium heavy instead of the heavy. So, anyways, that's my rod setup for my A-rig. So now we've got three more to show you. Next one would be my punch rig. So we talked about punching, we talked about extra heavy stuff. Well, here we go. This is a 7.5 extra heavy fast. It's a 6 cents rod as well. It is my punching rig. You can see here, I got a big old flipping weight on here, big old craw, and nothing but braid. This is actually a rod that I don't even use very much. You can see I've got the Abu Garcia reel on it. This is my cheapest reel I have, but I don't do a lot of flipping and punching just because I don't have a lot to do around here. But when I do, this is the rod that I go with, 7.5 extra heavy fast. So again, not very much bend up here, very sensitive. I've got two more to show you guys, and then we'll wrap up this video. This next one is the spinnerbait. So my spinnerbait rod, this is the Victory rod. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. Bass Pro actually sells these rods. These are really awesome rods. Go out and check them out. If you do, I've actually got a link you guys can use. You can, if you buy them from Bass Pro, actually get a little bit of a cut from that. So let me know. I'll put it out there on the video description in case you guys want it. But go out and check these out. St. Croix makes these rods. They're Victory fishing rods. This is my 7.4 heavy fast action. So pretty heavy rod, as far as just the durability, but lightweight. Doesn't weigh very much at all. The tip on it is actually pretty good. It's a little bit more flexible than some of my fast ones, which I kind of like. And I think that's probably why I like to throw that spinnerbait on there. Now, I also use this for my jigs. So I love throwing football head jigs on this thing, Texas rig worms, stuff like that. That's all right up my alley for this setup. Again, this is a 7.4 heavy fast action. All right, and then last but not least, because I don't want to leave these out, we talked about the moderate action, right? The treble hooks, things like that. You kind of need that big long cranking stick, that 710, that 711 for those huge crankbaits, those big deep diving crankbaits, so you can make those big long casts, cover a lot of water. But then you also need kind of an in-between on your moderate rods, from the square bill to kind of, that medium diving crankbait. And so for the medium diving crankbait, I use this rod. It's a 7.4 medium heavy moderate action. So I use that for my medium diving crankbaits. Actually got this one at a Skeeter tournament. I just actually liked it. It's a TFO rod. Quite a bit of bend. Definitely quite a bit of bend, moderate action. Really like it. It really works well for my medium diving crankbaits. Probably one of my more favorite rods to use when I'm throwing the medium diving crankbaits, and probably one of the cheapest rods I use as well. So hopefully that helps you guys out tonight. So we talked about the different rod types, really the power, the heavy, the medium, the extra heavy, all that good stuff. Then we talked about the action, the moderate action. It's going to be a lot more bend. Fast action is going to be less bend. As long as you remember that, you're going to be good. And remember, on your links, the more accurate cast, you want the shorter rods, the less accurate cast, but yet you want to cover more water, more open water fishing. That's going to be when you use those giant rods. Or if you're flipping into really heavy cover, you may want to get you a longer rod for that as well, so that you can really cover more water, just if you're kind of stuck just flipping certain things. So anyways, guys, hope that helps you. Hope you get a new rod for Christmas. Until next time, hope you catch your PB. Take it easy.